Hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast, where you'll learn how to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit. No influencer status necessary. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and today we're starting yet another series related to your virtual summit speakers, and we're kicking it off here in episode 133, talking about keys to engaging summit speaker interviews. So we're going to cover things like deciding if an interview format is a good fit for you, top interview mistakes to avoid, how to have an actually actionable interview instead of a boring one, and I'll give you a peek at my interview outline. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that our Summit in a Box program goes deeper on this topic and really everything else related to running a summit. But for interviews specifically, we have a detailed fill-in-the-blank interview intro script, and we have a full interview outline, a process walkthrough, and checklist, tech recommendations, and so much more. We open enrollment a couple times per year, but you might just be able to sneak in through our masterclass on the 3-part framework to tripling your monthly revenue with the virtual summit while building your list for free. You can hop into that masterclass at summithosthangout.com/class. So let's start by talking about if an interview format is a good fit for you, because it is not for everyone. Personally, I don't do them because I'm an introvert, and also because of the time it takes to interview 20 to 30 speakers, and for one person to go and have to do all of those things, that's a lot of your time. Also, I avoid interviews when I can because I just find that presentations are usually so much more actionable for attendees. But they're a good fit for you when you are confident in your interview abilities or can practice before you start. So if you have never done any kind of interview before, you're not really sure how to make it actionable, I wouldn't recommend that you learn how to do it in a summit, because attendees aren't going to go to an interview, get bored and not be happy with what they see, and then go to other ones. They're going to say, okay, this summit isn't worth my time, and I don't want you running into that. They're also a good fit for you when your speakers aren't used to giving presentations. If your speakers aren't in the online business space, if they aren't used to creating presentations and giving them, I would recommend interviews for you because, they shouldn't have to learn a totally new skill to be able to be in your summit. So interviews are going to be a better fit if you have like doctors and, people like that who aren't used to giving online presentations. They're also a good fit for you when you have speakers who are in a time crunch and don't have time to sit and outline a presentation, make slides, record it. Keep in mind that you can mix and match presentations and interviews in your summit. So if you want to do mostly presentations, but a couple speakers you really want don't have time to make a presentation themselves, you can offer them an interview, and that's totally okay. That's what I do. And then last, they're a good fit for you when it works for the topic or the theme of your summit. So for example, I pitched a speaker for one of my summits to come and speak on typography. So like fonts and things like that in the design world. And she wanted an interview. Well, that wasn't going to be a good interview because, typography is very visual. And that's not how an interview works. So we switched her topic that was a better fit for an interview. Interviews might be a better fit, though, if you have a summit based around journeys and having conversations with people. You'll still need these to be actionable, but the conversations will, of course, flow more smoothly when there's 2 people involved. So think through those kinds of things to decide if an interview format is a good fit for you. Next, let's move into top interview mistakes to avoid. And I have quite a few here. The first one is letting your speakers do long personal introductions. You need to control the length of the introduction by doing it yourself and then diving right into questions. You're going to lose your attendees if your speakers go on and on about themselves for several minutes. A special case here when this isn't as important is when you have a more sensitive topic where your audience needs to relate to the speaker before they trust them. So for example, if it's something related to a mental health condition or something like that, something really sensitive, your speaker should take a minute or 2 to share how their experience makes them a good person to learn from. But we're not going to start back in their childhood and learn about, them growing up and where they live and how they got to where they are. A very short and sweet introduction. When you're doing the introduction, 1 or 2 sentences max, and you're diving right into the questions. The next interview mistake that I want you to avoid is asking everyone the same questions in every single interview. That gets so boring so fast. And I know it makes it easier for you. I know a lot of people think that, it's fun. It's the theme of the summit. We're asking everyone the same question. That is not fun for attendees to watch. So don't do that. The next mistake to avoid is not bringing energy into the interview. And again, this is one where I'll plan an interview, and if both people are just like monotone and really low energy, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And you will have people that you interview every once in a while who are not energetic, who come and they're just kind of flat. They don't bring a ton of personality. It's up to you to lift both of you up. Even one person with energy is better than 0 people with energy. The next mistake I want you to avoid is having just a casual chat rather than getting down to actionable steps. So when your attendees are coming to your summit to get a transformation, you have to be able to deliver that transformation even through an interview. So having your speaker share actionable tips is going to come down to the questions you ask and how you lead the interview. It's on you. So we're going to get to that. 2 more mistakes here. The next one is doing more talking than listening. Focus on being an active listener. Speak less than you want to, even when I know how tempting it is to add your 2 cents after everything they say or add your story into the mix. Your attendees are there to get value from your guest. You are there to feature your guest, not yourself. So let them come in, share their stuff, leave your opinions out of it. You're focused on the person you're interviewing. And then the last mistake I want to touch on here is skipping the speaker agreement. It's just as important with interviews as it is with presentations. You need written permission to use the video moving forward with, a video of another person and them sharing their content. You need a written agreement to make sure that you have the rights to do that so that they don't come back to you later and say that you didn't have their permission to share it. All right, so those are all the mistakes. Next, I want to dive into the key to actionable interviews, because one of those mistakes was having boring interviews. We don't want that. So actionable interviews really come down to the questions that you ask. So ask questions that will make your speakers dig below surface level responses. So when I'm coming up with questions for an interview, I think of it as if I was outlining a presentation for this person to give. So don't be afraid to ask, what are the X steps to do this? And then ask follow-up questions about each of those steps to dive even deeper. And if they try to give you a surface level answer, what are 3 steps to make that happen? Or it's up to you to keep prompting them to get the kind of information you want. And then another key I'll share to get nice actionable interviews is giving your guests the questions you're going to ask ahead of time and point out the questions where you'll be looking for extra actionable and detailed answers. So I usually try to send my interview questions about a week in advance. And for any of the questions where I'm I really want them to break down a step-by-step strategy here and not just give me a 2-sentence general answer, I will add a little note that here's where I'll be looking for a 3-step process for you to go over. We'll touch base on what those steps are before the interview. So they know that I am going to be asking about this before we even hit record. All right, so those are my top tips for getting an actionable interview, which is so important. Let's move on to our last section here, which is just giving a general structure of a good interview. And notice I said general. Tweak this for your audience, your topic, your summit. This is what works well for me and, most of the students, I guess, that I've seen put this into action. But if you're hey, it's not going to work for me because of blank, okay, cool. Change it for your situation. And like I said, we do have fill in the blank templates and examples and scripts inside of Summit in a Box to make it easy, but let's go over what this is. The first thing you want to start your interview off with is an exciting and really short introduction from you. In very limited cases, you'll also add in a short introduction from your speakers if that extra trust we talked about is needed. The first question you're going to ask is an introductory question about the topic. So, kind of getting your speaker to share, their general take on what you're talking about and key the audience in on to what they'll be learning. An optional question you can ask is the biggest mistake they see. This is going to be better for some presentation topics than others, but you can ask about the biggest mistake people should avoid. And then you're going to dive deeper into their specific strategy. Here's where you're asking for their top 3 tips or their step-by-step process for making whatever the interview is about happen. And then that's also where you're going to dive in and ask follow-up questions to dig deeper and give more specific advice. So when you're listening, don't listen as an interviewer. Listen as someone learning about this topic. What questions are coming to mind for you as the speaker is talking? Your attendees will have those same questions, so ask them. Get your speaker digging deeper as much as you can. Another optional question you can ask after that is like the biggest takeaway. So if a lot was covered, you think your audience might be a little overwhelmed, ask the speaker to share what they want everyone's single biggest takeaway to be, and then kind of back that up with some action steps. So ask what are the first 1 to 3 steps, whatever that is, someone should take to get started. Again, this is something you'll want to touch base on before you hit record, so your speaker is expecting it and knows what action steps they want to share. From there, that kind of wraps up like the training piece of the interview, and now it's kind of the closing it out. So first is where you'll let your speaker share whatever resources they have. So invite them to share their freebie or additional resources that will help the attendees put what they learned into action, and then go ahead and close things out. Thank your speaker, point out that first action step, and encourage your attendees to go get started. So interviews really aren't the best fit for everyone, and it can be hard to host an engaging summit with all interviews, but if you are skilled at interviewing and can get actionable information from your speakers, you can totally pull it off. So your action step for this episode is to write out an interview outline based on what you want your attendees to get out of your summit. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. For show notes and resources mentioned, head to summithosthangout.com/133. In the next episode, we'll be chatting about how to follow up with potential speakers after pitching, so be sure to tune in for that. Before you go, remember to check out my free masterclass covering the 3-part framework to tripling your monthly revenue with a virtual summit while building your list for free. We cover the secret to creating a plan you can actually follow to make your summit happen, even if your business is already too busy, how to host a profitable event and land expert speakers without a huge audience of your own, and how to use the 3-part profitable summit system to triple your monthly revenue and the size of your email list. There also just might be a special private offer to jump into Summit in a Box before we open the doors next at the end of the class. So you can join that at summithosthangout.com/class. Now go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit.